Important. I think he's got all the agenda items tonight, so. You're gonna be glad you got your coat. I know. Jamaica. Thought we were done with June gloom and then we went to July gloom.
Yeah.
You want to eat. It's not 100 degrees.
Hey, she's gonna be good. Oh, that's so. Yeah. We have to work outside. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the Trinidad City
Recording in
Council
progress.
meeting for July 14th, 2026 to order. We are reconvening from closed session. We have nothing to report from that closed session. And I think with that, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first thing on tonight then would be an approval of the agenda. Any questions from the council on tonight's agenda? Any questions or comments from members of the public regarding tonight's agenda? Right, back to the council then for a motion.
I'll move approval of tonight's agenda.
Second. And a second from Councilor Breckenridge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Next, we have minutes from the June 9th, 2026 meeting. We have it. Are there any questions? Did we have those in the packet? We do, right?
Yes.
Grace. Any questions or changes from the council on those minutes? Okay. Any edits or suggested changes from members of the public on the minutes from June 9th, 2026? All right, back to the council then for a motion.
I'll move, we approve it.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
A second from Jack. All those in favor? Aye, so moved.
I'm going to abstain because I actually didn't get a chance to read, so.
Okay.
I'm gonna let this happen.
All right, Bryce is abstaining. And Anton, you let me know if I'm going through the administrative stuff too fast. And I'll be happy to slow down. So the next item on agenda is council reports and committee assignments. Are there any report outs from anyone? Okay, John.
So the Redwood Regional Economic Development Council met last month, and the let's see, what do they call themselves? They call themselves homemade or made in Humboldt County. It's what the presentation was by lady that's in charge of that, Roka Dixon. But she gave a really great presentation. Talked about the businesses and the business situation, the business environment right now in Humboldt County. You know, she just gave some rough numbers, and I'll just give you a thumbnail sketch. A couple of years ago, they made a survey, and they found 1 out of 4 businesses closed their doors for one reason or another, which left about 450 or so businesses still in Humboldt County, which I was kind of surprised that we had that many businesses still in Humboldt County. And, you know, the Economic Development Council provides funding and loans at a reasonable rate for any new upstart businesses that may be interested in trying to get funding where they may not be able to find it at a bank or some other standard source. I was kind of interested where they got the money to begin with. And you know, 1977, when the National Park System, Redwood National Park, there was some money set aside for economic development, and that money from the park went into this Redwood Regional EDC. So that money is available for up and coming businesses, people that are interested in such thing. Oh, and she did state that the Times Standard for Humboldt County, there on Sundays, they have a little article, a little page in there to talk about businesses. If any local businesses want to write up an article and have that included in the Times Standard on Sunday, I'm sure she said they're looking for articles. So that'd be a good way to get some marketing and advertisement and interesting businesses that might be local there in Trinidad area. And the Made in Humboldt idea, they're trying to present it to outside Humboldt County. They're trying to go, they got this connection now with Alaskan Airlines up in Seattle. So she's working with some ideas about how to bring people down for a weekend to view Humboldt. And there's, cruise boats that come into Humboldt occasionally. So they're working the ideas. They got a creative idea bank going here. The one thing I don't know if you caught it on July 4th, the National Geographic came out with the 7 wonders of America. And the wonder was, of course, Grand Canyon, the second was Yellowstone, and the third, does anybody want to take a guess what third was?
Trinidad?
Darn
I
close.
was gonna say the red.
Coastal Redwoods. Coastal Redwoods is now one of the 7 wonders of America. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that.
So that'll bring some tourist money into town, I think.
Yeah. Very cool.
That's all I have.
Thanks. Yeah.
Do you have anything, Jack?
Yeah, nothing to report this week.
Okay. I don't have to report. And Bryce.
I attended the June 18th, 2026 meeting of HCOG. And one of the items that we approved on the consent agenda there was Trinidad's fiscal year 2025, 2026 local transportation fund claim. So we're good standing in that regard. And we also approved the essentially offering the position of executive director for HCOG to a certain individual. So that's still pending, and I'll probably find out Thursday if that's going to go through or not. That's all I have.
Thank you. I don't have anything to report this time. Any questions from members of the public or comments regarding the report outs from the council? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council and to the city manager for the public safety report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do not see Lieutenant Holt on the call. I did invite him. I do not see him. I don't believe he was available. This may have been his vacation week. So
Fighting crime.
Fighting crime. So, I'll just take a moment briefly to review some of the stats. I think if you were to look at the reports that are included from the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office, they're not typically unusual for this time of the year. I actually have the period of, I think it's June 30 into the 5th of July also included in this packet. And obviously there's a flurry of calls on the 4th and the 5th for fireworks. But for the most part, looking at the stats, there was not anything. I think I was talking to Councilman Velasquez earlier about the codes. One of the things that I'd like to do for you is to get an index of these codes. So if you were curious, if you were looking at the packet material and you were wondering what XFIR means or TPAT, I think TPAT is patrol. So anytime you see TPAT on these call logs, those are times when the deputy has logged that they've entered into town and they've done a patrol and there's nothing to see. And XFIR is transferring to medical. So a lot of the calls you see for 306 VUAP are typically, which I believe is the Trinidad Bay Trailer Court. There are some, I think it's true. Councilmember Kenny can relate the sirens going on. A lot of these calls that there are frequent calls for medical service at the trailer court. So I didn't see anything unusual. There's no bites. Bites the code for animal bites. I usually look for that when I'm scanning these reports. That's a scary one. And those are the things that get my attention when I'm reviewing the stats. And then I call the lieutenant and I ask him to deep dive into these items and bring some of the insights to us in these meetings, because I want to call him out. And that's why at the last meeting, when he attended, I was grateful that he was able to kind of dive into the trends. And when you look at the stats, you can see the trends. A lot of the calls, like I said, came in on the 4th and the 5th with fireworks. I think there were 9 or 10 calls, which is typically what we would get in a month here. But our hotspots are the same this time of year, especially because there could be some transients that are maybe undesirable in and around the entrance of town, which Murphy's generally calls for support when that type of activity occurs. So again, I didn't see anything unusual. There's nothing that really stands out, but if you have any questions, please ask and I can relay them to Lieutenant Holt.
And I don't think you need to refer this one. It's just a brief question. You know, the siren goes off all the time.
Yes.
Why?
Well, good question. Bryce, I think you and I talked a little bit about this in the past, and I think the fire chief and I have talked about it. A lot of these calls oftentimes are dispatched to cell phones nowadays. But the siren, if you don't have your phone nearby, it's there to get your attention. To the attention of any volunteers that are within an earshot, yes.
Yeah,
It could be medical, it could be something else.
could be a fire.
Could be a fire.
Yeah, the fire department was always volunteer from the very beginning. There were people, volunteers throughout town. If they heard that siren, boom, they knew to go to the firehouse. Yeah. It's kind of a remnant of prior to the past, but one of our active and very qualified firefighters mentioned that he still likes having it as a backup in case the cell phone ever don't working. Still potentially used.
Is there anything that a regular citizen who isn't a volunteer fire person, when they hear it? No.
As far as the 4th goes, I know we're jumping into July with the stats being mainly focused in June, but I made a round of calls before the 4th, the week of the 4th, which is typical kind of the management responsibility of the city to make sure that our public safety team was in place in the event there were any incidents around the 4th. That's a weekend here. There's a lot of people that come to town. I did not hear of any specific incident that occurred that was unusual. I did hear from members of the public that said that they did notice an increased law enforcement presence, which I think is pretty common this time of the year everywhere, with zero tolerance, with alcohol related or intoxication, driving. So I was happy to hear that there was an echo of the feeling of a safe community over the weekend of the 4th when a lot of people were here. I actually did a drive through the morning after the 4th, and the streets were pretty much litter free. I was pretty shocked because usually you see the remnants of fireworks. I know there were safe and sane fireworks going off in town. I think there was quite a bit of a fireworks display in the surrounding communities and beaches, but I didn't see anything unusual. The streets were very clean, so if there were people shooting fireworks off in the streets, they did a nice job cleaning them up afterwards. I'm curious if that same vibe was felt by anyone who was here over the 4th weekend. That would be nice to know. I think our team did a really nice job. I think our law enforcement and our public safety, Pacific Coast Security, and our fire chief all were spotted doing rounds. So that's been something in the past that has been missing, I think. Not so much in the last 3 or 4 years, but prior to that, I've had experiences where people just felt that it was a little too wild without supervision. But I don't know, just curious to see if everyone had a similar experience. But going from that to the Public Safety Day, I think on the school, I think it was June 9th, where our public safety team also participated in public safety day. And I touched on that in our staff activities report. I got some pictures of Anton and public works crews hanging out with the Bearcat in the parking lot of Trinidad School. And Drew Taylor from Pacific Coast Security. He was very proud to be in attendance and people have been invited. So our team was represented there too.
Well, I would, if I could just add in on that, junior lifeguard program is going on down there on the beach too. And I'll tell you what, the Parks Department is doing a really good job on that. I love seeing those young kids out there being, exercised on the beach and then in the water. And that's, maybe they should have an adult program like that for us to keep us in shape. But the state parks, the state park enforcement, law enforcement too, I think is doing a really good job. I know the people that live on the periphery of the park there often comment about the good job that they're picking up on problems that, are on our perimeter on the other side of the fence, so to speak. So.
Yeah, I didn't get any complaints about 4th of July. What I've heard it said is just that, staff and everyone in the law enforcement were very proactive. And that proactive, I know, Gabe, you even kind of rode around and checked things out and made sure that, things were going well. And that's kind of above and beyond. And so I think it went really well from everything I've heard. So it's as good as it can. It was the 250th anniversary as well. So that made it extra special.
I think McKinleyville had a big sign up that said no illegal fireworks or something, which I thought was a pretty good idea. That kind of nipped it in the bud right there. There's no question that fireworks were illegal.
That's a good
It
point.
may be something we might want to consider.
Yeah.
Next.
But I'll remind you that these are your policies, right? This council has decided, how to handle its law enforcement and with Pacific Coast Security and the contract with the sheriff. Right next door.
All right, any questions from the members of the public regarding the public safety report out? Okay, seeing none, anything else, by the way, from the council? Your last first, okay. In that case, I will go ahead and move us on into items from the floor. At this time, members of the public may comment on things that are not on tonight's agenda. We ask that comments, stay, within 3 minutes if possible. And with that, I'll open up the floor. Well,
Yeah, thanks for having someone else to me to speak. I'm Brian Yogan, and with Public Services. Full meeting to talk about the Salmon Berry people. Just wanted you all up to date on this.
getting our microphone working out. Sorry about that.
Okay.
It's a little.
Yeah, so we continue to make progress towards our fundraising goals. And there are going, we're currently, I think when I said really, $1,000 fundraise so far, and our goal was 30,000. We're additionally looking at some savings to kind of offset some of that goal. And we're making progress there. I'm hoping to present a little more information to meeting, I think, is your next council meeting. And so I can provide a little more detail at that. We are hoping that the city might be able to help on some capacity to help reach that goal if we haven't made it. And our enrollment numbers, we were, I think last time I said we were trying for 8. We're currently at 6 now that through the verification process. And we have 2 other outstanding applications. The parents have done the preliminary applications, so it's just kind of verifying everything and certifying that they are eligible. So those are all really positive steps. Ability. Yeah, so just again, thank you all for entertaining the idea of supporting the preschool there and you can get rid of families. Any questions?
Thank you.
We did have another parent and speak in, and I think you were going to ask them a question. Okay, here for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Cecilia Lenarte, and I'm here tonight as a parent and someone who deeply cares about our community. First, I want to sincerely thank you for taking time to consider Sambury Preschool. I know there are many important needs competing for limited resources, and I truly appreciate your willingness to discuss ours. Sambury Preschool has been operating out of Trinidad Union School since 1999. For more than 25 years, it has been the first classroom experience for countless children in our community. It gives young children the opportunity to learn, grow, build friendships, and become comfortable in the very school where many of them continue their education up until 8th grade. That connection matters. Salmonberry isn't just a preschool. It serves as a natural pathway into Trinidad Union School. Families build relationships here. Children become familiar with the campus, and many continue on into kindergarten and beyond. At a time when Trinidad Union School is already facing challenges with low enrollment, losing this program can make those challenges even greater by removing one of these schools' strongest connection points with young families. The reality is that this isn't only about preserving preschool. It's about investing in the future of Trinidad's educational system. If we lose this program today, what does that mean for Trinidad Union in the years ahead? These decisions don't happen in isolation. They ripple through the entire community. Like many early childhood programs across California, Salmonberry has also been affected by the expansion of transitional kindergarten, or TK, which has shifted many 4-year-olds into public schools earlier. This has made it increasingly difficult for preschools like ours to remain financially sustainable, even though the need for quality early childhood education has not changed. Our goal is to raise $30,000 by the end of this month. Thanks to the incredible generosity of our community, we've raised approximately $12,000 so far, and every donation of that has showed just how much people care about salmonberries. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Rodney and his team at North Coast Children's Services. It would have been easy to look at the numbers and simply say this program wasn't sustainable. Instead, Rodney saw the commitment, not only from the parents, but from the entire community. He chose to work alongside us, helping us find solutions and giving Salmonberry the opportunity to remain a viable option for Trinidad families. We are incredibly grateful for his leadership, his willingness to listen, and his belief that this community is worth investing in. In recent weeks, our fundraising has begun to slow. I believe many donors are waiting to see how the town chooses to support this effort. A contribution from the town would not only provide meaningful financial assistance, but would also demonstrate that Trinidad believes this preschool is an important part of our community. That leadership could encourage others to step forward and help us close the remaining gap before our deadline. Tonight, I ask you to think beyond this year's budget. Think about the families deciding where to raise their children. Trinidad Union School, think about the future enrollment of Trinidad Union School. Think about the generations of children who deserve the same opportunity that so many before them have had. The decision we make today will shape the Trinidad of tomorrow. We have an opportunity to strengthen our community before a small problem becomes a larger one. Once a preschool like Salmonberry's is gone, rebuilding it is far more difficult than preserving it today. Tonight, we have the opportunity to choose preservation over regret. I respectfully ask you to invest in Salmonberry Preschool, not only for the children who attend today, but for the future children of Trinidad itself. Thank you for your time, your consideration, and for all that you do for our community.
Thank you.
And then we do have a little video that NCS put on for you guys.
Are we gonna play that or
If you'd like, I can cue it up.
I just want to be careful because we've not agendized this topic. And so we probably should, if we're gonna go any deeper, with the back and forth. Is it a short video or? Just trying to be mindful of that, because we will try to maybe fit in some discussion about the monetary side of this into tonight's budget discussion. Because we will be talking about audit, and I think we may be able to slot this in there. Let's do this,
It'll take about 2
2
minutes.
minutes, okay. What do you think, council?
We get
Huh?
2 minutes.
All right, let's do it. Okay, council would like to move ahead. And we will see the video. Good old voices.
Part of it was down in Tampa. And part of it was years ago, when we were on Maxwell's Road, it's a farm, it was called Sarasota Farm. And so we became Sarasota Forest Schools. One of the assistant teachers was, one or two teachers was an HSPS art student. So we moved it to my house, where I'm living now. So we rented out the whole lot of them. And we would add it. It was at our house. Senator Raster, we moved it, joined the preschool, built it, not even in health. On tree. Therefore, I think. I moved secondary from the Rancho Reading to the Seventh Day Adventist Church.
The people at the church were really wonderful, and that's why we were vegetarian. Because Seventh Day Adventists are vegetarian. We were using their kitchen that they still used when they were there on Sundays. And I was there until we moved it in '99. So I have myself and a parent and everything.
Very hard, it's been at school for over 27 years. Generations of children have formed.
Very nice. Thank you for playing it, kids. All right, I'm gonna move on. Any other items from the floor? For the council, things that are not on tonight's agenda? Yes, we're still, items from the floor as public comments regarding anything that's not on tonight's agenda. Yes.
Ashley, live just outside of Trinidad on the frontage road by Strawberry Rock. Thank you for having this meeting and offering the
A little closer than that. You can.
Well, we're gonna try to turn it up too.
There you go. Awesome. So again, thank you for having this opportunity. I think it's very impactful that we're seeing these presentations on San Valley and also concerns about increasing tourism in the area. I remember attending a very impactful presentation in elementary school where this presentation shared ways that we as kids could help the environment by turning off the light when we leave the room, turning off the water when we brush our teeth, and recycling. So practice a lot of those same, kind of simple everyday things now as an adult, almost 30 years later. And I know now one of the most impactful ways as an adult is to use my voice and speak up when I see negative environmental impacts. So thank you for having this opportunity to share this with you. On Monday, June 29th, my spouse flew out of the ACV airport and he noticed a very large clear cut northeast of Trinidad, along with a few smaller clear cuts. He does fly frequently and he noticed that this was new. We took a walk onto Trinidad Head on Sunday, July 12th, because we had to wait for the thaw, and it's very noticeable. So my neighbor just up the hill off of where we live also let me know that there was a recent clear cut above her house as well. I have Also spoken with other neighbors that have had some interesting wildlife interactions. My neighbor with the clear cut had the deer jump into her 6-foot fence. And with the deer in the fence, and she's lived there since the 70s. That was in we've also heard of numerous bear interactions with them unlocking doors. We actually had a bear in our house as well that not only tried to unlock the door, but also walked up several flights of steps on our deck, which I feel is very peculiar for animal interactions. And I can't help to think that maybe these out of character habits could be because of this habitat, these clear cuts. I've talked with neighbors that have been here for a while and they haven't noticed things like this in over 50 years. I went on to do some more research online and I noticed that now during this 50-year time period of where that's and now in that 50-year harvest time frame. So I know it might not be, anything that we can do, but I just wanted to share my thoughts and concerns knowing that we're going into this potential 50-year cycle. I know that tourism is a big thing here. Yeah, we were actually on our walk and there was a family that was like, oh, where are they going? And they're like, oh, I don't think it's anything special. And we're like, no, guys, come here. And we took the spur up on top of the rocks. And one of the kids, he had to be about, holy cow, this is amazing. So I can't help to think that, are we going to get those reactions if we just see all these clear cuts along the way? I also know that the water system here in the town is very precious and fragile. And I know there's also have non-traditional water sources that could be developed. And I again just know that one of the main things that a lot I also care about is their own values. And I know that right now, as a data, again, that the way we don't we know this will cause on the inconsistent knowledge. I don't know if there's anything that can be done, but I just wanted to share my concerns. I know.
Thank you. And yeah, definitely raised awareness. I wasn't aware of clear cuts, whether that's on Green Diamond or private property, but we'll keep that in mind. And it's something to mention to the supervisor, Jerome, and future supervisor when they're here. And he attends our meetings quite frequently. So, and I'll just say as an aside, I've experienced the bear.
Right, I love the word
Kool-Aid man right through our fence the other day, so. Yeah, so there's a lot of bear activity right now. Any other items from the floor? Okay, well, rest assured, those of you that have made comments that the council is listening and where possible, we'll take action. And where possible, we'll at least raise awareness. So appreciate all of the good comments tonight. Thank you. With that, I guess we'll go to our consent agenda. Any questions from the council on tonight's consent? Any questions? Seeing none, any questions from members of the public or comments regarding tonight's consent agenda? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council. Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Jack will second. Katie made the motion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we have passed the consent agenda, which takes us then to the main portion of tonight's agenda and action items, and the discussion presentation regarding the 2024 water rate study and budget performance technical memorandum issued by Rural Community Assistance Corporation, or RCAC. And I know Samantha's joining us, but I'll turn it over first to Gabe to kind of set this up and then go from there.
Thank you. So this, I didn't include a staff report because I didn't want to. Samantha did a really nice, her team did a really nice job summarizing everything. So, but I will say that it would have been nice to have a staff report is what we're expecting and why this is on the agenda tonight. So first of all, the action tonight would be to receive the report. There is no immediate action that is recommended you take. So it's just an information item. And yes, Samantha Ryan is with us tonight, and I will be turning it over to her in a second. I will just preface the discussion by saying we were really lucky to get RCAC involved in our rate study in 2024. And for those of you that were here at the time, Mayor Kelly, I think Councilor Tuttle were here with us. I was very supportive of RCEA's involvement. In fact, I think we discussed the possibility of having GHD do it. And because it hadn't been done for so long, GHD was like, they're welcome to do it if they'd like to do it, because we knew the results would be fairly extreme in terms of the water rate increase, because it had been 2012 was the last time we passed a resolution. Those rates were in effect for 5 years, 2017, and then 5 additional years later. We were actually 2017 was the last one. We didn't change the rates till 2024. So there's been quite a bit of time. So those rates went into effect October 1st, 2024, after the rate study that was performed. Samantha did a really nice job in here summarizing the rate structure that was adopted. We had 3 rate proposals that were on the table. I think after all the information was gathered by RCAC, they proposed 3 different rate models, of which the council adopted the, let's call it B, rate option B. And that was, as Samantha said in this report that I got up on the screen, I think Samantha characterized it in her report as that affordability was, I actually can't find my spot now, but basically the council prioritized the affordability versus really funding funding, covering all the costs, mainly funding capital improvements for future capital improvements, because as you know, we burned through all of our capital reserves. So with that said, I am very happy to have Samantha back with us. I called her, I was reading this report late last night, and she and I both are night owls, and I messaged her, I said, hey, can you please help me tomorrow night and be a different voice, because I know you hear from me a lot on a lot of subjects, but I really, she stepped right up to the mic. She says, yeah, no problem, what do you need? So I thought, I would have her present some of this information. She and her colleague, Jessica Olson, I believe, Samantha, you can help me if I'm wrong here, but I think there was I don't know how many hours it was, but I think it was a follow-up as part of our rate study through RCAC that they were dedicated to do this budget review. And I think it's fairly common when they do these studies to come back and sort of test the results a couple of years, if not 2 years later. So with that said, I'll stop now. I'll turn it over to Samantha, and Samantha, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Gabe. Am I loud enough for everyone to hear?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Good evening, mayors and council members. Like Gabe said, my name is Samantha Ryan. I'm with Rural Community Assistance Corporation. We're a nonprofit that serves the 13 Western states. I'm the representative kind of for this area. I live in Eureka, California. And so we did a water rate study back in 2024. And we're just going to talk about how the current water fund budget looks and how the updated projections compare with the assumptions of the 2024 rate study. Just to be very clear, this is really not a new rate study. It's just a check-in to see whether the water fund is performing as expected and whether the rate study assumptions still look reasonable and whether any planning adjustments should be considered. I'm going to try to go through it in the order of the board packet so that you can follow along if you have that in front of you. I think the big key takeaway, if you get nothing else, is that the updated projections that you guys adopted for fiscal year 2027 kind of show that the annual revenues are expected to cover the day-to-day operation and maintenance costs all the way through fiscal year ending in 2030. However, the water fund is not expected to be collecting enough to build up the operating, emergency, and capital reserves that our CAC would kind of recommend that you have. A general fund loan, which we talked about during the rate study, is not expected to be needed during this planning period unless there is an emergency or some sort of major change in your operating conditions. So to get into the background, section 1.1, we were here in 2024 to do a 5-year rate study. And so we were setting rates from fiscal years 2025 through 2029. Like Gabe mentioned, let me back up actually a little bit. During that rate study, we had to make a lot of assumptions. The city was going through a lot of transitions between contract operations and trying to get an in-house T3 operator, among other things. And so the rate study really had a lot of assumptions. And so that's really why we're back reanalyzing it to make sure that all those assumptions were on track. So again, the future contract operator costs, general fund contributions, and the general fund loan that we talked about in 2024 were all things that we kind of really wanted to make sure whether or not they were good assumptions. It's a good practice to check your actuals, revenues and expenses on a regular basis and make sure that everything is tracking, but in this case, it was especially important. So 3.1, the rate study overview. Like Gabe mentioned, there were 3 rate options. We brought 3 rate options because of all those assumptions that needed to be worked through. And so you guys elected to go with the lowest cost option of those 3 options to keep the customer bills affordable. By no means was it a small increase. The base rate increased between 30 and I think 35 and 45%, depending on if you were inside or outside customer. So it was a very large increase, but it was the lowest cost and not setting the water fund up for collecting the reserves it needs to replace major infrastructure. It was also assumed at that meeting that the city was going to try to reduce costs where possible, including the contracted services and other operating expenses, to try to make sure that they weren't overcharging customers. The rates that were adopted assumed 2 things. One, that there was going to be a general fund contribution in 2025 of $300,000, but then ongoing, there was going to potentially be a $250,000 general fund loan to help keep the water fund afloat. That loan that was going to be in years 2 through 5 were to really help maintain any sort of like an emergency funding, and then also to give some sort of buffer in case some of our assumptions fell short in the rate study. The study found that the water fund needed to cover annual operating costs of about $520,000. This can be seen in section 3.2, $520,000 up to $560,000. And then we were also trying to get you guys to start building operating, emergency, and capital reserves. To stay on track with kind of what we recommend for reserves, you'd have to set aside somewhere between $120,000 to $160,000 per year just for the reserves. So total expenses, you're in the $700,000 range. In 3.4, we kind of look at what the revenues versus expenses would be with the rate increase. And over the 5-year rate study period, it was projected that you would have $256,000 that was added to reserves. A big thing to note about that is that includes that $250,000 general fund loan. So really, you were operating with a $6,000 buffer there if you didn't include the general fund loan. So when we look at the updated budget, we looked at actuals through 2026. Gabe updated them even kind of further, I think, at the last meeting. But in 4.0, we talk about the overall water fund with the new projections. And I would say that the water fund appears stronger than what we projected in the 2024 rate study. The main reasons for that is that you have additional non-water sales revenue helping cover your 2026 operating costs. So you're using, I think it was interest and late fees to help cover 2026 operating costs. You also had Measure Z funding in 2026 that helped replace your treatment plant assets. You had some lower salary costs in 2026 than what was expected. That's mainly because you are currently operating with the interim city manager and not paying the full city manager salary at the moment. And then moving more into like 2027, 2028, you're going to see some improvements from having that in-house T3 operator that was brought on in 2026 and being able to cut off the contracted operating services that you were paying for. Another thing that's helping you come out stronger is that you had some unexpected connection fees in 2027, where you're expecting them. I think it was in the realm of about 10 new connections or so that wasn't part of the rate study. So under the current budget outlook, the general fund really is not expected to be needed during this time, unless there's some sort of emergency or, again, major change in the operating conditions. Even without the loan, the city is projected to transfer about $126,000 into reserve over the next 5 years, with the potential for more with things like non-water sales revenue, those extra connections and things like that. Annual revenues are generally expected to cover your operating and maintenance costs again through fiscal year 2030. So, the rate study period was 2025 to 2029, so that kind of tracks out. It really does reflect on the value that of the operational changes that the city has made over the past few years. Credit to your staff there. Just so you know, though, by 2031, water sales revenue is expected to not cover your annual operating costs. So you'll really need to redo a rate study no later than 2031. We kind of recommend that you get one done by 2030, though. So the water fund is still not projected to reach the recommended reserve levels under the current rate schedule. You should know that. From fiscal year 2025 through 2031, the water fund is projected to add about $96,000, almost $97,000 into reserves. But you're underfunding your reserves by $938,000. So you're really not setting aside the money you need to replace critical major infrastructure. So treatment plant, pipeline, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, by 2031, you're really losing out on almost $1 million of what we would recommend to set aside. So it's really important for you to understand that your day-to-day operating costs are separate from your reserve needs. So your water fund is expected to cover operating costs for the next few years. It's really that future capital replacement and emergency reserves that you're not funding with the current rate schedule. That is kind of what the board elected to, or the council elected to do back in 2024. So it is on track. Other things to keep in mind is that you're really balancing your budget using some one-time or temporary funds. So the Measure Z funding, the connection fees, those things are great to have, but you should know that those are not going to be more than likely not ongoing revenue that you should be expecting. And so RCAC kind of recommends that you just continue to monitor your water fund each year and compare your actuals to your revenues. But currently, everything seems to be going more or less on plan with the rate study. Just understand that you are not setting aside money for reserves, really to replace those major assets. We do recommend that you plan on doing an updated water rate study in 2029 to set rates from 2030 to 2034. Hopefully at that time you can try to increase the amount that you're putting away to reserves is what we would recommend for that. But that kind of covers everything. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have on the topic.
Questions?
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed the report and I agree with the recommendations. I'm wondering out of curiosity, are you familiar with the California rule that municipal water districts cannot charge more for the water than it costs to deliver it?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my understanding. We have a rule about that. And my question is, can, before a municipality would run afoul of that, can you be charging enough to fully fund your reserves? See what I mean?
Yeah. So the true cost of serving water includes reserves is how that's kind of understood. And so you should be setting aside money for capital reserves to replace major infrastructure. Most systems don't necessarily set aside enough to replace all, sorry, there's an echo. Most water systems are not setting aside enough to replace their entire water system. A mile of pipeline costs about $1 million to replace. So you'd have to have a pretty large bank account. So typically you should have a reserve policy set up that states what your target goals are for your reserves. It's usually something like 1 to 3% of your capital asset valuation for your capital reserves. And then you have an O&M reserve to cover 90 days of operating expenses, and emergency reserve for replacing some sort of critical asset like a pump that's needed. And so you would set that those maximums kind of in that policy to show good faith to your customers. But yeah, collecting for reserves is definitely part of the true cost of water.
Okay. And just an observation and a comment, I guess, is that it seems to me that the time frame around 2031, maybe a few years beyond, there's a lot of moving parts about the various scenarios that this area could be facing, who we could be delivering water to. That's so, you know, there's I think a pretty significant possibility that hookup fees could become a pretty substantial source of additional revenue for the city water department, even though you advise that we don't consider them to be something we could count on every year. And I understand that, but I also think that depending on how a couple of other things play out that are in force right now, we could end up extending water to some areas that have really been wanting it for like 35 years. If other things fall in place. So that's just a comment. And again, thanks for the report. It's very useful.
Sure.
Other questions from council? I guess just kind of a general comments and one question that's kind of detailed, but all in all, I thought this was a very positive report, great report as usual. Thank you. Because we don't have to, so it's positive that no loans are needed. We don't have to do the $300,000 general fund contribution or loans. I think I would compliment staff, Gabe in particular, on reducing contractor costs. That was a huge positive impact. The operating budget is therefore mostly balanced through 2030. The negative, of course, is this reserve funding being inadequate. And so we would need to fill that gap and, through potentially grant funding if we needed it, potentially, as Bryce so aptly pointed out, there may be additional water connections that we make, especially if there's any annexation that occurs down the road. We may have some need for one-time revenues to fund improvement. So that's going to be an issue. I guess rhetorical question is, would connection to Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District reduce the reserves that were needed Or would we still need as much? This is just something for us to think about. It's more of a rhetorical question at this point. Or would we still need a significant portion of reserves for the distribution system, right? For the water distribution system. The only kind of, and this is kind of a detailed question, Samantha, is page 49. I didn't know what the 25,000 was in interest and fees and late fees, sorry, because it appears to be revenue. And I wasn't sure, maybe Gabe knows, but I think it's on page 49 in the packet. So see what that's called.
Yes. So
Yeah, you know what I mean?
I can answer both of those a little bit. Or in general, water systems, their distribution pipeline is a majority of their capital costs. Like I mentioned, it's $1 million per mile. So while you wouldn't have the surface water treatment plant that you would have to maintain if you were to interconnect, you still would have to have a healthy reserve, and you would, probably want to consider that pipeline coming all the way up to Trinidad, who's in charge of that, however many miles that is. As far as the interest and late fees, the 25,000, those are what your actuals. You brought in $12,000 worth of interest and $13,000 in late fees, according to staff, and so that's non-water sales revenue. Typically, our CAC doesn't include non-water sales revenue in our projections because we like to leave that. We want to see that your water sales are covering your operating costs, and if you have non-water sales revenue, that can help offset things like reserves, but you just don't want to be counting on being able to pay your salaries and stuff on revenue that fluctuates from year to year.
So this one-time revenue that we got interest on our own loan to ourselves? Or I'm so confused, I'm
So I
sorry.
make sure I'm looking at the right page of the packet.
It's of the RCAC report, it would be page. Let's see, I'm looking at the packet number, so
I think it's the table on
This one?
looks
the
like
table under 4.4.
on our page.
Is it that slide right there? Okay.
So see column 2 where it's 2026, and then it was interest and late fees. At first I thought we had incurred expenses for interest and late fees, which is how I normally see something like this, but this is revenue.
So I believe, I have to look at the budget. Samantha, did this come from our budget that we provided to you?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Late fees would be from customers paying
Yes.
late, I believe.
That's a lot of late fees.
yeah,
And we didn't have any the year before, so that's why I was.
yeah, that part I'm a little, I have to look, I have to.
So we might have
cross-reference
to
our budget.
take that.
Right, but the interest is interest earnings on any money that's in the bank, which we have invested in.
Allocated to water, so like our reserves.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that makes total sense, although I wasn't sure why there would be 0 in 2025, so here's something to take a look at, I guess.
Yeah, and these are part of our, I mean, what I fed to Samantha and with regards to our budget, I'll cross-reference it, and we can also look at it in the audit too. But why I think, I added those because they are part of the city's regular budget.
Yeah.
Samantha and RCAC's team typically don't include them because they do fluctuate, and like I think what Bryce are getting at about charging for the cost of water as opposed to your ins and outs, your expenses and revenues.
Yeah, non-water related.
Non-water related revenue, yeah. So that is part of our budget for the purposes and intent of making sure that we're balanced and we're not taking loans from we don't need loans from the general fund. So I'd have to look at that and talk it over with Smith, but that's a good point you brought.
Yeah, I mean, so overall, I think that, it's clear that we've stabilized, all the day-to-day
Yes.
operations, right? And reduced our dependence on the general fund. So I guess the next challenge is just how do we build more reserves if we need it to cover the aging infrastructure of the plant. So that's all I had. Anything else from the council? Any further comments on this? All right, I'm going to open it up for any public comments or questions regarding the RCAC report. Well, I don't see anything from members of the public at this time, and this was really valuable. Samantha, thank you very much. As usual, very well thought out and presented, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, back to you, Gabe.
Thank you very much, and she knows how much I appreciate her and our partnership with RCAC.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a great tool. We're going to be able to use this in the future. It's going to be right there with us every time we do our budget.
It's really helpful.
Yeah, it's going to be with us when we. I mean, almost on a quarterly basis this year. I consider this year to be a transitional year for the water fund again, because it's the first year we'll have taking control back from the contract situation, and also, you know, with regards to my role in the city and the city manager's salary and how everything kind of ends up gelling together this year is really important. You know, I think we all have a vested interest in seeing the water fund survive, and I think this also kind of touches back on the point I think I brought up in the past, where when the rate study was adopted, there was two things that were committed. One, that if we're going to accept rate B to kind of make the rates more affordable, we're also going to do everything we can to sharpen our pencils and cut costs. So those two things were kind of rung loud and clear in my ears. And you're right. I think this was a great report. And when I read it, it's double-edged. It has the side that Samantha mentioned, we're not funding your capital reserves, but at the same time, it shows that the boat is turning around, steering finally in a different direction. Yeah. And I'm very happy that we had the opportunity to utilize their services to give us that third party.
I agreed with the recommendation to review this in 2029 as well.
It's hard to mark your calendar. That's the first important.
I'll come and make public comments.
Yeah.
For you guys.
I'd say I would like to maybe maybe do it sooner. Like say the Rancheria decides to actually go to Humboldt Bay, we would probably need to, because that's a big rate payer for us, and so we would have to say, what are we going to do now? So maybe before 2029 if that thing happens. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, any big change in
Like I said,
customer.
yeah, the future is kind of uncertain for us.
Mhm.
Support water.
Yeah. Thank you. Good job.
No action needed, just receive, file, accept the report, and yeah, we'll use it as a guide for us moving forward with all of our budget reviews, whether they're quarterly or biannual. And
Excellent. All right, I guess with that then, I will move us on to the discussion presentation regarding the FY25 audit report prepared by JJA CPA. And Gabe, there was a lot of data there in this report. I'll have a few comments, but I'd like to hear your thoughts first.
thank you. Financial hygiene, I think, is the theme of tonight's meeting, right? It's just to make sure that we really understand what we're dealing with from a financial perspective, considering we just did the budget. And when we did the budget, we were basing the budget on some assumptions. One of those assumptions was the audited financial reports for fiscal year 2025. Again, I didn't add a staff report to this budget. I just figured I'd use this opportunity to call out a couple of things in the financial report that I thought were highlights. And again, it's a receive and file, no action required by the council. No formal action to be made. So with that, the first bit of news is that there's no recommendation. So this is our second year working with JJA CPA. Brett Jones is our current auditor. He came on at a time with us where, for anyone who was around, we were about 2 years in deficit of audits. And I think the council had pressured the city manager at one point because our staff was like, we can't move forward with grant projects. Our auditor, about 17 years retired, 2 years ago, and we had to search. So I was lucky enough, it's not too hard to pick up the phone and call other cities and say, who do you use? So that's how we ended up with this firm, and it was through a recommendation from Blue. Their offices are in Dublin, and they have another office in Fort Bragg. There's not a lot of people working in this field. GASB and the various county practice law for public entities is very complex. And again, we're really lucky to have Brett and his team. He's not with us tonight. I told him I got this, but if we ever need him, he would be there for us for a phone call. So again, this goes back to 2025. These were normally we like to get our audits completed in February or March. This one took a little extra time. I think they have become also a little bit overwhelmed. They've got a lot of new clients. West Haven Community Services District is a new client of theirs too, because when our auditor retired, he left West Haven Community and does, Trinidad and does. So they took on a lot more clients up here too. So we're a little bit behind. Typically, we like to use the audit to help us, make our assumptions in the upcoming fiscal year. Whether or not our financial statements that are reconciled by our bookkeeper are then certified and verified by our auditor. It's a practice that we do to make sure that, our practices internally are healthy and free of fraud, but also that our financial statements are being presented in a manner that's truthful and that we can all count on, right? So it's a third party review. Essentially, Brett was happy. I took a call with him yesterday just to kind of make sure that I was seeing what he was presenting and it was all accurate and correct. The first thing was that there were no audit findings this year. Prior year, the findings that they made, the primary finding was you guys need to do your audits in a timely manner, which that had never been a problem until our auditor had retired, and then I think our not the former city manager, but the prior city manager before that was struggling to find something. So that finding went away this year. And Brett said, yeah, no findings. Everything went well. All of our tests of our bookkeeping, all of our tests of our invoicing to make sure the accruals were, being assigned to the appropriate fiscal year. They all went very well. Our bookkeeping firm, Sherry Tillett at Cunningham Malone Morton, who has been with the city for probably since 2008. We got it pretty wired and we all communicate very well. And no audit findings is typically a signal that your practices internally are tight. So that was one thing. The other thing I wanted to point out, I'm going to see if I can share my screen. I know all these are small, but I'm going to see if I can pull up the two things that I really wanted to just highlight to you from the financial perspective. But so I know. So this page right here in the budget or in the audit is entitled Statements of Revenues, Expenditures, Changes in Fund Balance, Budget to Actual for the fiscal year June 30, 2025. So at the end of this year, June 30, 2025, these numbers, let's see if I can just who's paying attention. Property taxes, sales taxes, transient occupancy taxes, vehicle license fee, building planning. Here's our revenue sources. And over here in this column shows the budgeted amounts, original, the final amounts, budgeted, and then the actuals. This is what we received. And these are the numbers that they are testing with our financial statements to make sure they're accurate. As you can see, property taxes, we had a $4,937 positive variance, meaning that we budgeted this, we got that, and we ended up with a little extra. Same thing with sales tax. We budgeted $351,200. we received 413,441 with a positive variance of 62,000. The occupancy tax column, we budgeted 215,000. The actual shows 286,480, a difference of 71,000. I am pretty sure that that is a quarter that was added to our amounts. A little bit extra. Brett and I did zero in on that. So even though it looks a little inflated, it's like, wow, you guys need to actually up your annual budget. The realistic number is about $50,000 shy. So all these things come out in a wash when we do 1 year to the next. They're called accruals. But I just wanted to point out that there seems to be a trend this year of our conservative budget estimates for revenues getting sort of tipped in our favor, which is our common practice when we're doing budgeting. We conservatively budget for revenues and we're kind of generous with our expenditures, just so we don't get too excited and then we overspend and we're running a deficit balance.
And
So
with inflation, as it is right now, sales tax could be,
totally. So that was what I'm getting.
That's always relating to that, but.
So the overall difference here, and then we scroll a little bit further down. Here's how the expenditures. He just very much generalizes the expenditures. General government. That would be your general fund administration and all the different pages of the general fund. Public Works, Fire, general fund administration that we've talked about in our most recent budget meeting. So we actually, this number right here, 54,327. The general fund that year essentially profit based on two things. One, probably underspending, but two, gaining extra revenue that we did not budget for. And then with our transfer out of 300,000, which is the number in this column, which we transferred to the water fund to stabilize it from the general fund, left us with only $245,000, $245,673 in money from in your change in fund balance, we're going to call it. So that left us. When I was doing the budgeting this year and I was showing you our reserves, I talked about the money that we spent on the town hall. I talked about, the money we spent putting into LAFCO's pocket for the CSA fire study. And I estimated that we were probably going to be around $2.2 million in reserves. At the end of fiscal year, and then I thought suddenly after we did our budget, I'm like, oh my God, I missed the $300,000 transfer. I forgot to add that into my calculations and express that to you in our budget meeting. And I was going to bring it back at this meeting, but the audit actually works out really well because it shows how sort of our practices of conservatively budgeting revenues and our our liberal expenditure process ends up sort of coming back to surprise us in a good way. So the fund balance for fund after that year was 2.136, and I'm pretty sure our estimates for this current fiscal year that just passed it closed with the savings from not having the city manager's salary fully would then increase that even. So my estimates, I just wanted to call out my estimates during our budget this year were almost spot on, but with the close of this coming fiscal year then added to it, I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised. So our current budget year, I expressed in our documents for the budget a $73,000 overspend this upcoming year. So when you put that into perspective with how well the general fund reserve is doing, and potentially how we might fare if we are conservative with our personnel expenditures in the next couple of months going ahead and even into this full fiscal year, it's a net, it's a wash. We are just cruising. Things are kind of symbiotically balancing themselves out. And then, of course, you can measure that to how you feel about the performance of your city, how you feel about performance of your staff and then how you want to reinvest those reserves. So the reserve was my real focus to this audit. I really needed this number to determine, to be able to see whether or not my assumptions moving forward in your budget were accurate, because I was kind of hip-shotting sort of from a very educated perspective. But the audit just really kind of gave me a sigh of relief when we got it. Just the other day, I was okay, I thought, well, I should have given him a $1.8 million number because I forgot that $300,000. You know, it just like slipped right by me. But then as it turns out, we're doing that money was well spent.
Nice when it comes to
And then the other thing, there was one other spot in here that I wanted to point out in the audit, and hopefully it's not too to make you scrolling through here.
What page are you going?
I'm going to, I'll see it I'll know it when I see it. It's coming up here in a few seconds. I'll tell you when I land on it. It is this one right here. So it looks like on the audit, it's page 35.
How about in our packet?
Ooh, it's gonna be somewhere around 115, depending on what we last refresh your brain.
It's over in your right.
101.
The far right column, screen gives a page number.
Yes,
So
That's
in
what
the
I'm
packet,
doing.
it's 101, and then in the
packet 101.
it's
101.
101. And then, yeah.
And it's this chart right here. And it's what the audit, and this is an independent auditor's assessment. I think he tells us everything we kind of already know. But as a city of, as a tourism community. But again, independent auditor, right? And I don't have a friendship like we had with our previous law, right? So this auditor doesn't have 17 years of experience working in the city. This is a guy who came out of the city, I think a year ago or maybe a year ago or so in person, but then he's like, I don't need to come back in person. We're going to do this from afar for now. So on this page, he talks about the dependence upon the tourism industry. We know, right? So the city is economically dependent on tourism, generating tax dollars for providing revenue to its general fund, so on and so forth. The tourism industry accounts for all the TOT collected and significant portion of the sales tax collected. Property taxes, rents, and franchise fees are also main contributors to the general fund. Consequently, a downturn in the tourism industry for the city could result in substantial reduction in the general fund revenue. In the event of such downturn, the city may have insufficient resources in its general fund to pay all of its obligations. Well, he's saying if in such a downturn, the city may have insufficient resources. That is the reason why you have a healthy reserve, right? That is why we have a reserve that's roughly twice of our operating budget, which we cracked $1 million this year. Fine. But the chart below is really interesting because, or this graph, I should say, or this list is 2021, 2022, 3, 4, 5. It looks like property taxes are going down, just at face value, but it's not going down. It's proportion of this revenue pie that we looked at during our budget, right? So as you can see, property taxes are becoming the more tourism dollars that are generated. And I see this a lot because a lot of my contemporaries that came from the green rush era of Humboldt County have now invested in Trinidad, whether it's their residences, whether it's various lodging establishments around here that we all know. Their infusion of their investment, their earnings are being invested in this community. But in flip side, they also want to see Trinidad kind of mirroring their desire to enjoy and to make a living off of the tourist industry, right? So there is we have a dual personality in Trinidad where we love Trinidad tourists, but we don't really want sometimes. And I know that my time here for the city has, I've been through a lot of that ups and downs of how people feel about tourism. But this number right here, or this chart really kind of painted that picture for me very vividly as, the baseline bedroom residency of Trinidad is now starting to slip a little bit deeper into the shadows of our economy. And our economy, and just over that 4 or 5 year period, it's not a huge downturn, it's a 3%, but you can see how the other revenue sources, TOT and sales taxes are generally what's that?
And it doesn't add up to 100% because the auditor is considering the other 13 to 20% coming from some other source.
I think so.
They're not quite sure why it wouldn't add up to 100%.
Well, there's interest earnings, part of our revenue sources for the general fund. There's interest earnings, transfers in and out, various other sources. I think these are the primary feeders of our economy.
Yeah, I mean, the show tax, to your point, the rents and franchise fees were like the cell towers and things like that, right?
Rents and franchise, yes, cell tower, Trinidad Head lease, PG&E franchise fees suddenly.
Right.
Franchise fees, Humboldt sanitation pays a franchise fee to the city.
Oh, okay.
Right, so, but I thought this was just an interesting point.
It is, it's really interesting shift in the economy.
It's a very interesting shift, and it's, I think the pressures from these investments that are being made by young families, young businesses. And in fact, I was standing outside today talking to the public works guys, and one of the owners of one of the lodging establishments in the greater Trinidad area who lives in town was expressing his gratitude for the work that's happening at the entrance of town, the roads, because it kind of shows that this Trinidad is really kind of taking care of itself. And of course, he said, "Hey, when are we going to get a pickleball court?" And he's like, "What's going on? Everybody that stays at my place, they love, they want it. They really are desiring it." So I'm sensing that the outside city community who is in the lodging business is really turning to the city of Trinidad to be a hub, an outlet for their visitor services. Anyway, that's just I can read these audits and kind of see these things in the matrix, so to speak. But that was an interesting takeaway from the audit too. Just to see other people's perspectives. I think other perspectives are really important. But the other page is about the water fund. I think they don't go into this level of detail. So I could talk to you about what the auditor made findings about the water fund. He really just looks at our revenues. And then what they do is they take all the activity from the year. So if you look at the page on proprietary funds, you'll see there's $2.2 million a year. Well, yeah, because all the grant infusion from the tank pipeline project was added when they did these audits. They look at that as a capital improvement, part of our overall financial profile. So looking at this audit isn't going to give you any answers on the water fund. Not nearly as detailed as what Samantha just provided for us. So,
but it was consistent. The auditor did call out, I think, the need for reserve funding, which tied there's a direct correlation to exactly what RCAC said. So
hygiene between all of the things that are happening right now is so important. Just see how every different set of eyes that look at our city's financial overall profile, they're very consistent, which is really good. That's it.
Ready to take some questions? Council, any questions for David?
How can we increase our sales tax revenue? Have we put all this information into AI and said, "Hey, give us some ideas on how to make sure there's no leakage of sales tax," or all the things that we could be getting that we're not getting?
Well, food, prepared food is one source, and we've talked about food trucks potentially,
right,
as being as welcoming food trucks, restaurants.
We can encourage people to shop local.
Encouraging people to shop local. I'm looking to the audience right now because I was looking for Angela. Her father and it's kind of a family affair. Were allowed to set up the barbecue down at the harbor. Was it last weekend or? sold out in 2 hours. You know, and people who visited, apparently she was working down there, she can attest to it. And I heard this through other sources. I had a meeting with the BLM this last week, and the BLM guy who was here, the leadership for this area in Arcata was like, hey, what was with the barbecue this week? You know, I was like, what time? He says, it was amazing. Trinidad needs more of this. So, and Angela, I heard from Angela saying that they sold out a couple of hours. You know, they were down.
Was that taxable since it's on the?
Well, that's the part that's the downside, is that it was on the reservation, it was on the Trinidad tribal land. So no, but it was sort of a testament to the community's desire for other options. So if the city could, in theory, maybe find some solutions, whether it be working with the land trust and supporting their efforts to utilize that pasture area. I mean, these are just
Yeah.
yeah.
Isn't sales tax still our biggest source of revenue?
It is.
Okay, but it is down really.
Well, in 2025, it was up. I think it's stabilized. Really, it's kind of. I mean, I think there's. You know, we still get gas taxes, but then there's a lot of electric vehicles out there that are not getting gasoline or gas tax. So there's. I know HCOG in the state of California has been dealing with some of that.
State's looking at that very closely.
They've looked at that very closely.
Yeah, with EVs, you know, I pay a higher DMV fee. Does any of that actually come to the city?
Well, we do have, I think, vehicle registration. We do get a kickback from vehicles that are registered in the city of Trinidad. You know, whether those boundaries are perfect or they're more like our sales tax boundaries, we probably could very well read more than we're entitled to from a boundary perspective, but that's a state of legalization problem. We've learned in the past. So as far as inspiring additional sales tax, I think taxable food sales seems to be the lowest hanging fruit. Assuming there's a place for vehicles to park that sells.
And what would the eatery and the lighthouse have and Eddie's have to say about this?
It's a really good question. I think that there has been I've heard some chatter that the businesses don't necessarily really want competition, but if you poll anyone on the street, you in particular, I think told me a story about how you went to the eatery one day and they told you to be like a 40-minute wait. And
Yeah,
and they're like, sorry.
Yeah. And the
So,
rising tide raises all boats. So, you know, from a business perspective, having a couple more restaurants, people just, you know, we have plenty of tourism. There's plenty of room.
The idea of food trucks is great. I mean,
Yeah.
and that is taxable sales. Groceries, certain groceries you buy at Murphy's are not. So you go to Murphy's and you buy a can of, peaches off the shelf. Those are not taxable sales. It's prepared foods that's taxable. So there's rules. So that's one way. I mean, other than that, I encouraging people to buy. I think I've heard from the trading company that they're having a banner summer so far from a sales perspective. So there seems to be, and the restaurants are all saying the same thing. I mean, it doesn't take much to go wander through town on a Saturday afternoon. And just look at the lines out the door.
Yeah, somehow Trinidad seems to, no matter what the overall general economy does, we
Yeah.
like when people can't afford to travel internationally, they travel more locally in California. And we get more people, when international travel is cheaper, we get international people, they come here. We just are so lucky. We just are in a place where everybody wants to come and enjoy.
See when it's hot everywhere else.
In the summer season, it's, really happening. Yeah, we're very lucky in so many ways.
So a credit to the council for, putting the right tools and the right people in place to, be in a position where our financial well-being, at least based on this fiscal year's report, is healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's really good to see that we're financially stable. I think, grant funding still continues to be really important. It's great that we have the other sources of income, and then we kind of have to think about future maintenance. I was just looking through things of, as we get grant funding and we build these things or we add these things, like, whether it's a tennis court or a bocce court or whatever, then there's maintenance down the road that we have to think about too. But I was good news. There's no missing money. Things are really well managed. There's no internal control failures of any kind, no major accounting errors, no failure to pay bills, all that kind of stuff. So really, really good financial hygiene, and kudos to the staff, to you, Gabe, for doing that, for making that happen. So I did want to, before I go to any public comments, I did want to mention, we have heard now from Salmonberry, I believe, 2 or 3 times in a request for the council to assign budget. While this discussion is about auditing, I think we're within the bounds of this discussion to bring it up again, since it's not agendized tonight. So do we have a sense of what Salmonberry is looking for, Gabe, from the town at this time?
Good question. So Rodney,
You can ask Rodney. I just want
Rodney's still here.
Okay.
I think when I put together the agenda, I looked through my notes from in June. I understood, at least in the June notes that we had for the minutes, for instance, that July 31st was a bit of like a benchmark for some kind of timeline, right? They said, well, at the end of July 31st, and maybe Rodney could explain a little further, what those timelines are. So I knew that we would be talking about it again, or they were going to go on a fundraising mission, and then at the end of July, they would say, okay, where did we land and what kind of support do we need? That I didn't take that into account, that we weren't going to be meeting in August potentially.
Yeah.
So, but then I heard again tonight, just so everybody's clear, they're at about $12,500 of their $30,000 goal. So
They're up to 13. I looked today.
Okay, cool. That's good news.
Huh?
Yeah, almost halfway.
Yeah, almost half.
I hear that they're at what, 6, potentially 6 of an 8 target enrollment. So they're moving in the right direction. But then I also, and I'll let Rodney speak to this, that September is also an option to revisit, or if we can kind of monitor the situation for the next month or two. Is there a time frame that I could ask?
Go ahead.
Services.
Please, yeah. I don't want to be respectful that we've talked about this a few times, and we need to, come to some decision.
Yeah, thank you again for taking the time to taste for this. We had picked a July 31st date for fundraising, understanding we wanted to give families a little notice, right, and staff if we decided that we did it. So that, that was why we picked that date. Being where we are now, I mean, I would be comfortable bringing it to my board if the council wanted to consider this in September. And there was some kind of commitment to do something to help us kind of cover that gap, but I would encourage our board to go forward for next year, given where we are with our fundraising goals currently and where we are with our potential involvement. That kind of answers. I think as far as amounts, we do have some donors who have expressed interest in contributing more. So we do have some potential additional funding coming in, and like you said, we're at least 13,000 when I checked earlier today. I hope we can make it at least to 25, and if the council could do something between 5-ish, 6, something depending on where we're at, I'd feel really good about our ability to operate throughout the year and really make some longer term plans about how Salmonberry continue, whether that's as part of Northfield Children's Services or as another entity to be imagined by the community. I've expressed with families that I'd be willing to help support and transitioning if that's what happens. The demographics have changed quite a bit. You know, like Cece was talking about with transitional kindergarten, we've lost most of our 4-year-old population. Essentially half the children, right? You know, so you talked about an audit and you know, the Trinidad has become much more focused, like in tourism and maybe vacation rentals, which I think has changed the demographic of fewer families in the community, but there are still families. And so, you know, why it's hard maybe for us to operate a full classroom, there is always a need for that. And it is great for either school or the elementary school.
Well, okay, thank you. I
have a question. So if you get more children, if you get 8, and say you got like 12, every child you get more state funding, and so
Yes, this is the way it works. And so we've, you know, I think I explained a little bit in COVID, the state changed kind of their whole funding mechanism, and they instituted this thing called full harmless, which you guys may or may not be familiar with. But essentially, we have a state contract to operate preschool programs, and it has a maximum amount that we can earn. So earnings are based on the number of children we're serving. And over the last couple of years, they've started changing that formula. They're still in a little bit of finalizing what the rates are going to look like, but they've moved starting July 1, we have to earn our contract based on it. So it used to be by attendance before that. And so it's like, did it come? We might not get paid, but now if they're enrolled, we get paid for that child for the whole month, whether they attend or not, which is great and allows us a lot more stability in budget planning. So yeah, as we get more children, that's more revenue we have coming in.
And then if a family is income, they have too much income, then they have to pay a certain amount per month. Does that, but you don't get any extra county or government funding for that child?
No, and that's been changing over time. It used to be every dollar we charged the family fees if they weren't a subsidized family, the state would deduct that from what they gave us. I think, and I haven't had a chance to read the full funding terms and conditions because it's just but it looks like they're not going to penalize us in that way. So we have to make the earnings. If then we have other children whose families are paying the fees, they're not going to hold that against us. That's revenue. That's awesome. That's how it should be.
Yeah, I met a family that was interested, but they were over their income cap. Yeah. And they found out that it wouldn't even help sending their kid and paying the fees because you guys wouldn't get the.
Yeah, but we do now. So that seems to be a change that is enacted. And I would encourage families to apply, if you know people to encourage them to apply. We're, as a state funded program, we're mandated to serve the highest needs children first. So when in times when our enrollment is high, flush, and we're fully enrolled, right? Families, and this is how it used to be, it was really hard to get into programs. There was not enough space. Now that's kind of shifted with the kindergarten and fewer families maybe choosing to send their children to group care. But so we select those families first, but when we have a program like this that has some openings, vacancies, anybody can come and send their child if they're age eligible. They just may have to be.
I mean, I'm just reiterating, once it closes, it's going to be so much harder to reopen. And it is a feeder school for Trinidad Elementary. I mean, my kid went through there, just had an amazing experience. It's unfortunate that TK created this vacuum, take all those kids out of your program.
It's a mix. Yeah, right. Like many things, it has its plus sides, but it has these impacts. And I think to your point about the different opening a new center, this does have to be licensed through Social Security Services, community care licensing, and that process can take HS. And this is a license we had, and Arcata expanded to serve more children in another classroom, children under 3, and
it took us over a year to get that expanded license just so we could serve great kids.
So, I mean, I don't know whether this would be a motion, but if I were going to make a motion, the motion would be something along the lines of, that I would move to approve funding, to support Salmonberry, and the amount to be determined in the September city council meeting when the topic is agendized as a budget discussion, but not to, not the right word, I was gonna say, it's not to exceed if they funding no less than $5,000 to be determined at the September meeting. So do you see what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's a motion we make, or do we just hold until September?
I think we'd be a lot better off just holding on to the idea until September.
Yeah.
Frankly, I don't think the existence of the audit really gives us license to
Go ahead and
make a decision about something that's not on the agenda that involves allocating city money.
Yeah, fair point. I was very nervous about taking it too far in terms of discussion.
So I was very glad to hear it.
Okay.
To hear that Salmonberry is okay with the decision in September.
Yeah.
Because I'm inclined to approve something also. But
Right. We're all,
Yeah.
yeah, just tell your board that we are interested in helping you.
Yeah, that's
September
what
would be
I
a
was
better.
where I'm saying is because he needs to tell the board something, so.
And then that goes a long way in me being able to
Okay.
share that. That is one of the. The road mandate that we write to follow. We need and to have that kind of support for our programs. They're needed and wanted. One thing I've noticed about kindergartens in Salmonberry at the time when my kid was there was a small amount of kids that started the first day, but by this first month, we got like 3 or 4, because parents are procrastinators. Yes. And they do not think ahead very well. And so I feel like by September, you're gonna get a few more.
That'll be good.
Yeah, no, and I do think we'll have and that's typical for us to be, and I think, remembering back when my kids were little, you don't think about all that's involved in sending to school. You think I'm just gonna go to school, drop them off one day. No, and then and state program, there's all this certification, verification to determine if they're eligible. Subsidies. That's much appreciated.
All right, thank you very much, and we'll need to agendize this in September.
We'll
try to
agenda in
keep that on our
September.
list.
Yeah, and if you're okay with it too, I would be happy if it would help Rodney and his board. I could, write a letter to Northwest Children's Services just saying that our council is interested in supporting Northwest Children's Services, whatever.
And we'll
Whatever
have
investment in money.
discussion.
Just to express our intent to help them, not committing anything, just from a management level. That would help and then give it in.
That's good. All right, I'm gonna move us on then. Any last minute comments on the audit? I think everybody said what they wanted to, okay. Then I'm gonna move on to the November 26, 2026 City Council election calendar update.
So just very briefly, I just wanted to talk about where we're at in the election year so far. The nomination period opened July 13th. The candidate filing period closes August 7th. So we've got just under a month to rally, support, build positions.
Do you have anybody sign up?
None yet. Okay. Nobody has come forward yet. I've heard and had discussions with individuals, a couple of them who expressed support or expressed the desire months ago, have said, oh, well, maybe I can just wait until we see how many people sign up. So I have a feeling we're going to be, I have a feeling we're going to be in a final hour.
So maybe a request to the council is everybody, rattle the bushes and all your friends and colleagues and, Tell them how fun this is. This is really
Yeah.
fun
You
stuff.
know, one of the problems is that it's Trinidad square mile.
I know.
And there's so many good people just beyond the actual borders, and there's no way to, I mean, obviously we can't rush it, but is there any way eventually to change that ordinance?
No, it's a legal.
Hard can people
It's
say,
it's on the same order of reasoning that somebody who lives in Canada can't run for office in the United States.
why not?
It just is.
No offense to the Canadians. I'd love to help them. Anyway, so yeah, they're trying to find some folks and.
So-
Expand the city.
talk to
Yeah, we'll
people.
have to annex to get to the. But it really is, it goes along with Roland, what's his name?
Yeah.
His comment about, it being more and more vacation homes and 30 short-term rentals, and there are just not that many people who live here.
We'll find some people. We always do. Look at us. We did it.
Yeah. So just so you're aware, on the city website, we've created a banner. I got it up on the screen with a one-click city council nomination period opens. That's usually a space that's kind of reserved for urgencies. But we got a couple things going on here right now. We've got this, this pops up, Main Street paving overnight construction notice pops up when you visit the city website, which is kind of cool for the people that are like, what's going on outside? Why is it working? But then across the top here is a banner that'll take you to, the details page where we have a 2020. The general election from 2024 is archived on this page, but then we've got a page over here, general election resources, notice of election, and this is where we're going to start to park all the information about the election as it proceeds. So the details are on here. If you're at a dinner party and you're like, oh, let me pull up my phone real quick, and I'll show you where you can get information. Just right on the homepage, there's a nice banner.
I'd say we should say that we make $50 a month as well to try to really reel those people in.
I'll add that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll volunteer.
Yeah.
Paid basis.
Vacation.
So yeah, that's it for this one. I just want to
Vacation.
remind you. No action required.
Okay,
Formal invite in case people monitor our.
yes, exactly. All right, any questions or comments from members of the public? Anyone who would like to find out more about joining the Trinidad City Council? All right, well, tell your friends. And with that, I'll come back to you, Gabe, for the staff activity report, which is item number 4.
All right, so thank you again. This was a busy month, and I have up on the screen, just so we can maybe follow along a little bit. I had a lot of pictures this month because I think one of the things that we did in June, and I was really trying to do as part of our budget hygiene is also, evaluating all the employees. I think Karen Suker, former city manager from the 2010 era, was like, I want to do evaluation at the end of the year, just a year, because if we're going to institute pay rates in our compensation, now we're still working to realign our salaries and everything with our compensation study, classification study adopted in 2024. I feel like we really had a robust year this year because, there's salary increases, there's job descriptions that are being realigned and given and distributed. And I feel like we were all gelling pretty much this last month. Like we're really starting to feel like a cohesive team to the point where, Public Works is sharing information with me, photographs. Angela is out and about in the field and sees things and we share. So I was thinking, man, I was looking at all my pictures and all this stuff that we've all been working together as we've watched this tourist season start to unfold before our eyes. And there was a lot of interesting stuff in my phone. So I wanted to just throw them up in the staff activities report. Like Kyle, for instance, sent this picture on the cover
I liked the early summer.
Oh my gosh, you know, we're really, I mean, we did a lot of stuff this month, but this is where we really have fun. When we watch in awe and amazement of what drives through our streets, right? So Kyle sent me this top picture, which is kind of blurry, the photograph here or in the screen, but it was like, they are here, is what the caption said. And I think he sent it to me last week. The parking lot was just absolutely jammed packed. I think it was last Thursday or Friday. And then this earth roamer I found, I was like, what is this thing? And I found that these things, I forgot, I think it was Dan Dimmick, our building inspector, told me that it was like $1 million.
Oh yeah, those are.
Like, this wasn't just a couple $100,000. This is $1 million.
Oh, earth roamers. Earth roamers are, yeah, $500,000 to up to, a couple million.
Yeah, I will gladly have that vehicle fill up a Chevrolet.
Cool. Earth roamers,
Yes.
like earthworm.
And then here was another one, this Mercedes rig that I thought was the coolest thing. When we were it was parked out in front of, the fire hall, but it was like, it had a full cabin, like a car, like a van on the inside, but then in the back was the living, and it was just the most fascinating little rig. It's like we see all this cool stuff going into town, but these are the people that are spending money in our town, right? And they don't mind waiting 40 minutes at the restaurant, which is wonderful. Let them do it. Fantastic. So we had a really busy month. I threw some photographs in. We provided support to finish the audit. The bummer part of this last month was, and I don't know if we formally announced it yet, but I just want to highlight this at this meeting. We can talk about it in September. Our TA application did not get accepted. Right, our Humboldt Bay Municipal / City of Trinidad's water system comparative analysis study. Hope that we would apply for TA with a lot of encouragement from the state water board who coached us through this process. It didn't get funded. The application came in at a time where the state water board has they see a funding cliff. They call that's coming up in I think not this upcoming year, but the following. And it has to do with a big part of their funding source comes through the federal EPA for failing water systems. The federal government has its own standards for the United States and all of its residents to have good drinking water, but then each state has its own next level, right, of regulations. So our application, very disappointingly, got an almost immediate rejection because of two things. One, we were not failing, and we were not consolidating. So
talk about the feasibility.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes. So that is a direct sort of hit, and also a contradiction to what the state water board's funding priorities were in general in their intended use plan. But I think they tightened up at the very end of this fiscal year. We got when we got that message back, Angela and I got in all of the person that we were working with from the Division of Funding Assistance, who were like, what the heck is this? This is total broadside, what's going on here? And then what she did is she told us, hey, we are every fiscal year, July 1st is when they rewrite and reevaluate their funding plan for the upcoming years. Just like we all do with budgets, they have what they call an intended use plan, which is how they intend to spend their money and their priorities for spending those funds. So at the end of the fiscal year, they kind of ratchet down, but then once they develop that intended use plan, then they kind of open the floodgates again. So I think part of it was timing. So Brenda Pauly recommended that we attend one of the board meetings that were coming up. The first one was on July 7th. And that was a workshop at their state water board meeting in Sacramento, where the intended use plan for this upcoming fiscal year was agenda item number 5. 4 hours and 55 minutes into that meeting, I started watching it at 9 a.m. I wrote public comments for the city of Trinidad because it's my understanding from our guidance from insiders at the state that if we go and say, hey, wait, what about our situation? Or why are you just looking at the safer dashboard. Why are you're looking at metrics that are, they call it needs assessment. The safer dashboard is where we were given the at-risk category, right? We've talked about this in the past. It's been in meeting packets in the past. That is informed by a 4-year, every 4 year needs assessment, and the needs assessments are required to receive funding from the EPA. So long story short, we have an at-risk status. We are not failing. And the state decided to prioritize at the last minute consolidations, not interconnections, which is what our opportunity could potentially be categorized as an interconnection. Because a consolidation is like just, we go away. Somebody else takes over everything from management, finance, billing, treatment, distribution, everything. We're not consolidating. So anyway, long story short, she said, you should engage in this process. You should show up to the July 7th meeting and say, tell the board your story. Have them think about prioritizing systems like you for the technical assistance grants process. So Angela listened in on the meeting. I sat through that meeting. I provided comments. Those comments are in this packet. I've added those comments. They're actually at the kind of following the staff activities report. They're buried in here. I think they are right here. And there's a link. I added a link here, a hyperlink. This blue is the YouTube of the meeting. If anyone cared to watch Trinidad in action at the taking on Sacramento. So I provided these comments. I basically asked them to continue supporting the funding of at-risk systems here on the last paragraph. And also consider evaluating regional interconnection option as a viable discretionary funding priority for their board, their assistant director, to be able to have the discretion when they see an application like ours come in to say, let's give them the opportunity for the TA like they've requested. And instead of just shutting us down, like saying, oh, you're not failing, you're not a consolidation, which were their immediate priorities. So we're not out of the woods yet. Comments are due, written public comments are due from the city. We verbally deliver them. I deliver them in front of their board. A big screen, we have 2 giant screens, of this water board. And I was bigger, larger than life. I could see myself on the screen. It was very distracting. But so we're going to provide our public comments on the 23rd of July in writing, as this page here says, noon on the 23rd, and then they're going to make their decisions on August 18th as far as their drinking water intended use plan and their priorities for the upcoming year. So that maybe if we make a splash and we can get one of the board or several board members' attention, it's totally within reason that they'll say, yeah, let's give the deputy director a little more discretion to review these applications and determine whether or not we want to accept them if they don't necessarily meet our exact criteria for that particular home.
Is it beneficial to get other public comments too?
Certainly. Written community. And that's why I put this in the packet, so there's a place to kind of land. It says the state water, that top paragraph, will accept public comments on the draft state fiscal year 2026-2027 drinking water state revolving fund intended use plan. So I read the plan and I focus very specifically, because nobody likes public comments that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I really focused on the interconnection and continue funding safer categorized at-risk systems. And it was really just to say, give their director some discretion to see an application like they want agencies to come forth who have the wherewithal and the staffing to accept their support. I mean, that's their mission. They're like a bank. They need to spend this money. So anyway, that's kind of the gist.
And when you say spend this money, you mean fund the piece of.
They want to fund failing and at-risk systems. They have every interest in funding and keeping our water systems afloat and keeping good, clean drinking water in California, within every Californian's reach. So if there are systems out there that are failing but don't have the staff or anyone to actually help them help themselves, then that money just sits there. So
I think Jack,
When do we need to get the public comment from, our, to them? When do we need to get public comment?
So by noon, July 2023 is what this document is referring to, is saying the comments are due by June 2020. So, I mean, I think there's some pretty clear, not anyway, in this, I'm sure the state water board website is very easy to navigate, but if you want it, I can share with you those.
Yeah, share it, because there's a couple people in town that would be very vocal. That would be really vocal.
So we're not asking them to do anything out of the ordinary. We're just saying, in your policy for priorities, knowing that there's a fiscal cliff and you're trying to tighten up, because that was a lot of the meeting was about their funding forecasts. It was really just like, it's like giving them the opportunity to broaden their options for providing funding assistance for technical assistance, which is what we've asked for. We're just asking them to accept our application on terms that you don't want us to fail later. Now is the time to help us while we're being proactive.
Yeah.
Now, some guidance for what the public comment should look like might help, because it's kind of technical.
Well, I added my comments to the packet, and I really tried to make it to the staff activities reports, just so that for transparency, but also just as a little bit of a guide. They can echo those, really. You don't have to say help Trinidad, you can just say, I think continuing funding for at-risk communities and not just failing systems. One. And then also accepting regionalized or interconnections as an option to give the director discretion to take a deeper look at an application, and instead of just using AI to say, does it say interconnect, does it say consolidation or failing? Delete it, So that's kind of my.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Provide a little guidance.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at with that.
And there are just no other doors to open for this.
Well, I will be resubmitting. We will resubmit. I think to the state board. Yeah, this is it. I'm just going to keep putting it on their front door until they say okay. But I, from what I understood from the people that we work with at the state that helped us get to this point anyway, was that there's a window here. We submitted ours at a time where I think they were kind of perking up, tracking. And then as soon as the intended use plan is adopted, we might even have some influence on how the water board feels about our situation. And you'll read if you take a moment to read the comments, you'll just see, I just kind of told them our story briefly and said, in 2021, our situation was different when the intended use plan was given us a category of at risk. I said, since 2021, we've had a lot of situations that changed the game. Like we actually did fail from a financial perspective. These are post-COVID era situations. We have had an extended boil water. In 2021, we were just kind of cruising with the exception of the drought period that was affecting us. So anyway, we're not out of the woods yet, and we're not giving up, and I have very high hopes that they'll accept our opportunity. Accept the opportunity from us, but any help. Well, we're not just standing by that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Take it a second. That was one thing I wanted to mention. I also wanted to point out the bocce court. Gave that thing an overhaul, and the guys in the photograph down here can see. I think if I
I noticed it walking through there the other day. I could tell that they cleaned it up.
They brought in somebody from the land trust that reached out. I think it was Dave Farrell, the executive director, reached out to me in a message. He said, "Hey, Dave, bocce." And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with it. I went and took a look at it, there's weeds growing in it, and I'm like, nobody uses it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I got a couple of board members that apparently are big bocce fans, and now they want to play. And I was like, all right. So I called Kyle and Derek, and boom, they went right after it. They scraped out all the weeds. They got their dump.
It'd be great if more people used it.
Yeah. The library actually rents out balls, but they're only available Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I have a bocce ball thing, you know, whole bag that I could leave at the city hall.
That's cool.
You could say, loan it out to people.
We used to do that, but there wasn't a lot of action, and I think somebody ended up saying, these aren't just sitting around collecting dust, I'll take them.
Yeah.
So if you want to bring them, you're welcome to. Yeah. Cool. It's kind of cool. Kyle's been playing. He sent me a picture the other night. It was like after hours because he takes his dog for a walk at the beach, and then him and his buddies meet up, chit chat, and then they were like, let's go play bocce ball. So he said it was great. So, but yeah, that was a big job. They brought in they went and got some decomposed granite from, I think it was Hensel's Materials in Eureka in their dump trailer, and brought it in and dumped it.
Yeah,
And
looks really
got
good.
after it and tamped it down. And
Wow.
so our facilities are improving.
Yeah.
And share that goodness to your neighbors and friends. What else? This picture in this photograph here was of a meter. You can see it up close. So here's another good share with friends in the business community. So I don't remember what day was it? It was I think I told Cheryl and Bryce June 24th. So on June 24th, it was about 11 o'clock at night. I get a text message from somebody, an employee from the Trinidad Eatery, who sent me a video of water gushing down the street at West Street, turning the corner on Trinity. And it was about 11 o'clock at night, and they were closing down, and she's like, Gabe, there's a water leak. So I had just closed up from working on a project in my yard, and I was completely dirty. So I called Kyle and the guys, and I said, hey, what's going on? Carl is in bed. He calls, he says, I'll look at SCADA right now. I said, I need to know if there's a spike in the SCADA system. I want to know how big this is because I just got a video. It looks pretty significant. He's like, oh man, I'm in bed. I'll check it out for you. And I called Kyle. I sent Kyle the video and I said, Kyle, are you up? He's like, I'm up. I said, let's go fix the water. So we hopped it. We both met up here on East. It was a residence meter. And we were like, oh God, we're gonna have to shut off the whole street. We're gonna have to shut off Trinity Street. The eatery's not gonna have business in the morning. This is gonna be terrible.
Yeah.
So Kyle and I just went after it and we used the key that shuts the valve off on the meter. Boom, water shuts off. Yes. So Kyle looks at me and he's like, Kyle looks at me and I'm like, we gotta fix this tonight. And I said, that house right there is a vacation rental. That was a rental over here. And I go, they don't have any water right now. And they're gonna wake up in the morning and they're not gonna have any water. And they're gonna hear about it from Trinidad retreats. So, and then I said, and if we have to shut that water off, we might have to shut the eatery off to fix it. So he said, let's fix it so that everybody has water. And I remember sitting here listening to the business community tell us, at least members at our podium. So I just wanted to make that very clear to this council, to you. He put in the time that night and the two of us got that meter back on, running and installed. And the eatery, Betsy, messaged me in the morning and she's like, are we gonna have any problems with our water this morning? And I said, no, we stayed up late into the night to fix it so you would have water.
That was nice.
And she said, thank you.
She did. So anyway, yeah. So just for, if you're having any conversations around the dinner table and anybody brings anything up, I think these.
Good to know.
Yes, no, they're,
Oh, yeah.
as a city
Above and
representative,
beyond.
yeah,
Mhm.
so, and we were happy to do it. It feels really good to solve problems. And I think that's kind of also part of what I'm feeling with our staff, kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, really starting to feel like gelling and nobody's, crying. They're like, let's go fix it, let's go. So anyway, that was kind of nice. Let's see, Sandberry Preschool I mentioned a little bit. I guess we can talk a little bit about the intertie project, but I think that's gonna handle itself. We don't need to dive in. A low flow. So I added in the packet. This was July 8th. I got this email from Todd, Pacific Watershed, just so we're all aware. We are in low flow season. EWA measured 1.5 cubic feet per second for the bypass fluid discharge. Here's a photograph. Basically, I think 0.86 is our bypass, is our sort of like the alarm goes off. So this is what the creek looks like. This would look like last week, so July 8th. And then I got Well, shoot, so 1.5. I didn't. 1.5 today, this week, a week later is 1.46.
Okay.
So Todd basically did another reading today. I think I maybe just need to refresh my browser or something. But Todd sent it today and he just said, you know, the creek flow has diminished since last week. So
it's not unusual for this time of year.
No.
And just looking back at some of our drought years, some of the data that you sent me that we had from back then, it looked like it was quite a lot lower in the drought years. So far we're doing okay. We're tracking fine.
right.
And I thought, we fortunately we don't get a lot of our water from snow melt because it hasn't been a very snowy year. So a lot of places are suffering that, get a lot of their water from snow, but ours is.
It comes from the artesian wells that above the terrace, apparently.
Yes.
Special
water.
That we could tap into that has 1/3 the quantity of Ruth Lake. Yes.
Right?
This is starting to sound.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
The Franciscan.
Good.
He's listening. It was. So just wanted to keep you updated on the water flows along this creek. Let's see what else.
What happens? Is there a trigger point someplace where we have to institute something?
Our water rights for the say that once we reach 0.86 cubic feet per second, we need to notify them, and then that's when we get into it's basically a drought stage notification, and then the Fish and Game monitors us even more closely.
Yeah, because we're supposed to move some water for the
Leave some water out.
downstream, the downstream users and the fish and wildlife. So we're not supposed to take it all, in other words. And I think Peter Cohan would appreciate that because I'm pretty sure he's at the other end.
Yeah,
So
we've never actually reached that 1.86.
no, we got pretty close.
Got really
We're almost right on it in the drought years. Right on it, but I think we did go just below it, and the state kind of got on us and said, you were supposed to notify us. And by the time we got that notice.
That's right.
So.
Do we test at the same time every day? Because like in the morning, we have all that moisture that collects in the trees that probably would be a lot more in the morning than you would have in the afternoon.
That's a really good question. I've heard transpiration is the term, I think, when like at nighttime when the trees are relaxed and when all the forest is relaxed, they're not taking up as much water.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be correlated in our creek flow measurements as well. So I think Don Allen for RCAA at one point came to the podium and talked about that concept. That's science. And Todd Kramer can verify that. I don't know. That's a really good question. I'd have to ask Todd if it makes a difference. I mean, I would think that it it seems like it would make sense to do it at the driest part of the day. If we're trying to measure bypass flows, we wouldn't want to give any advantage.
Right.
Or disadvantage to the environment for the whole concept behind the bypass flows, but that is very true. There are different times of the day, evenings and daytimes, there could be a noticeable difference. Speaking of water, one last thing I'll add, and then I'll kind of turn it back to you is we had a little bit of a higher than normal consumption this month. So in the report that you see in the packets that I put on the screen here, we had 17. Oops, I highlighted the wrong one. So for June, we had a 17.11 average water loss, which is not that bad. Relatively speaking, we hover around the 20% range, 16 to 20% range on average. We had a little bit higher use. You can see, I put all this data like 22, 3, 4, 5, 6, so you can kind of see how we size up in our water consumed, not our water created. Obviously, 17% more is what we've actually generated and produced. But I usually put a note down here in this report, kind of just to summarize what I'm seeing. We had a significant number of customer water leaks, and some of them were pretty giant. Like we're talking 1,000 cubic feet. And generally speaking, those are due to malfunctioning irrigation systems at the beginning of the irrigation year, right? In June, July, when you start to turn on your irrigation systems, you know. Whether it's the heads on the watering units or a broken pipe somewhere, generally don't get caught right until they get their water done, or when we go and read the meters and we see just a lot. So, you know, I like to, Kyle and I'm starting to kind of sort of instill in Kyle that, you know, our dislike of public water systems, dislike of an irrigation system, because they are one of our biggest problems.
But they have to pay for that water. don't
They do, yeah. So, our policy will allow a one time a year, 50% split. And, you know, I usually kind of say that very carefully to customers. I say, is this the one you want to use?
Yeah.
You might have a bigger one.
Yeah.
You know, and then I also want to see proof that it's fixed. Or I initiate that. Typically, you can tell by just watching the meter spin.
Yeah.
And public works out.
Because insurance companies now have requirements that you have automatic shut off valves on. Yeah, house like water heaters and
That's a
things
good
like that.
idea.
You can flood your house and stuff. Yeah. So the technology is making that kind of stuff more and more available for all aspects of water systems that can get out of control. So
There you go. I mean, I just, the point I'm bringing this up for is to raise some awareness, you know, I mean, you know, a lot of people in the audience here, but you know, you socializing over the summer, just be like, hey, I was at a council meeting and it said you better watch your irrigation system. You know, these leaks are occurring. And they
So yeah, I have a $250 Wi-Fi meter thing on my meter. So I stick it on top of my meter, and it basically sends me an alert when a faucet is left on, things like that.
Is it made by coal or is it?
It's not. So there's a couple of different ways of doing it. You can get a plumber to actually cut your main and then do it that way to turn it off. Mine is more, it goes around the meter.
Cool.
Yeah. It's like a bungee cord that goes around the meter, and it attaches to my Wi-Fi network, and then
Wow.
it's the cheapest way to get it done. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sounds like a segue to talk one last thing. I just reminded me about radio read meters. We had a meeting with
Oh, yeah.
GHD. Was it June?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it was very into June, GHD had reached out. They have a radio read meter expert in their not in their local office, but in their regional office. He was coming up to their office. So Steve Allen reached out to us and asked if we wanted to meet him and talk about radio read meter transition. So we've got a couple of options, and some really kind of exciting options. I just received the proposal. So we had the meeting. Public Works was involved, myself, Angela. Sat in the club room. I think they started the guys started at the water treatment plant. I wasn't able to attend that, but when they came here, I was able to attend, and we talked about, you know, kind of getting down to the brass tacks and like, what does this mean? How can we get involved? So I don't have that information in front of me, but it looked like a pretty reasonable quote to Angela, help me out here.
I'm pulling it up right now.
This is a good segue. You're talking about water loss.
And then, do the consumers pay for it? The customers pay for it, or do we?
No, it would be us.
Part of our.
Yeah, we talked about a couple of things. We talked about calibrating meters, first of all, because a lot of old meters, so there are cash registers, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we're looking to optimize is potential for, the guys are actually going out around lately. They're really putting, now that the grass is slowed down a little bit, they're investing their time in fixing problematic or suspicious meters, like meters that have been on their radar for a long time that they're like, that's not working right, or that one's buried and they haven't been able to get to it. They're getting after them. So, you know, I mean, we have an obligation to our ratepayers.
Limit meters, right?
So they're replacing funky meters, they're looking into suspicious meters, but the quote that Angela is looking, or the proposal that Angela is looking at, or the deliverable from our meeting that GHD was going to come back to us on She can explain for real briefly, if you, can you summarize that?
So the project specifics, link survey of employees approximately 1 to 3 miles of distribution pipe, GIS of approximately 350 to 450 instances. Pipe material varies, and then it kind of just goes on to talk about.
Was this the leak detector?
Yes.
Okay, first phase, first
So,
phase.
First phase, and so the detection survey itself is 2,185. Mobilization, it comes out to 3,860. And if I recall, we might get this covered by flexible spending.
Yes, so Sierra could cover through their flexible spending account potentially a $3,800 very sophisticated leak detection for our entire distribution system.
Great.
Awesome.
Great.
This is really exciting,
That would be cool.
right?
Yeah.
And then once that's done and we determine, you know, where we might be having leaks in all these mysterious places, and this is something that's very tangible, we can actually get this done soon. And I should probably bring it back because it wasn't a budgeted item. And I can do that at a future meeting, September most likely. But then we talked as a second component of this, like, first of all, let's go check your leaky pipes, you know? And then the second thing was like, how can we start converting the town over to radio read meters? To the radio read meters, there's a couple different types. Radio read, where you just drive by, ping, ping, ping. You don't have to actually get out of your car, dig a hole and, you know, read a meter. But, and then there's also meters that are, I think, what capability. So we can, customers that belong to that meter can actually use, get alerts, there's leaks. So, it's definitely taken our game up a notch, but I think it's something we've been talking about for a long time. And we're very excited about it. You got a new team. You got a team of guys that are, you know, very kind of becoming a little more ambitious about how they approach, and the more knowledge they get, the more they want. You know,
It's great.
hungry for more. So
Yeah.
it's kind of exciting time.
That's good, taking us into modern times.
Kind of, yeah. So, you know, we always got piles and piles of stuff to work on, but this one was really kind of. That's it. I mean, there's plenty more to talk about if we wanted to dig in, but I know it's already 8. Like to ask questions and go.
All right, questions? I think we've kind of been asking them as we went along. Any questions from members of the public regarding the staff report? Okay, seeing none, I will bring it back to the council. The next, thank you, Gabe, that was really good. I read it right before the meeting, so. Future agenda items. It sounds like we might have some stray budget things that we want to talk about. So this, what you were just talking about, the water enhancements of Salmonberry and other things.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's an agenda item. Don't tell me. Mary Klein and Dorothy Cox are keeping this town clean.
I know.
And God love, you know, I see, you know, Mary's out there every morning, every night, and it's the cleanest town I've ever seen. I would like us to do something to formally thank them, recognize them.
They say they don't want it, but we could do it anyway. So we could do a certificate of appreciation.
So should it be an agenda item or?
I don't know what that, Gabe, what do you think? Agenda or?
If they don't want the accolades, we could do it without them here. If we wanted to do something internal, they would be welcome to attend if they like. We could tell them.
I don't even know what the thing would be, but something that's formal, a certificate.
Yeah, generally it's like
that. Then there's no fanfare, and they don't have to be.
And then we can maybe get the eatery to, you know, donate a dinner for 2 for them to enjoy their night out.
You have a set of pickup sticks. That's to great.
So if we agendize it, create a certificate, try to get a donation or something, or we, you know, fund a dinner for them or something. And then if they don't choose to come, we can email it to them and that would be.
Yeah.
So how does that sound? So let's tentatively do that.
Well, we've got
Agendize
to mull it over to before September,
Yes,
so
we
we
do.
can,
Yeah.
we can, on it.
Okay.
It just would be a very different town without them.
Yeah, there's such a thing as Trinidad Day. Do we have a day of celebration for
We don't
our
really have
founding?
Trinidad days, but we have like, the fish festival and,
I mean, that would be the time to recognize somebody, bring them up to the podium, say, and on behalf of the city.
What we don't want that.
Right,
yeah,
do
they don't, because I've specifically asked them about this too.
Yeah.
And like,
But
oh, we should.
Something that is
recognize-
quiet, but the city council recognizes
Yeah.
it. Valuable contribution.
So maybe a discussion topic at some point, if we agendize kind of recognition, like how do we want to recognize people in town and talk about it a little bit.
Between
Because
the
it sounds like
most town-
sounds like it's an agenda item in and of itself to just decide how we want to recognize people. But that's something to think about. I would add the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, the feasibility study as an agenda item too, maybe down the road, because we talked about it in passing tonight and about what steps we need to take and so forth. But we did get a couple of public comments that we weren't covering it as much as we should.
That's good.
I think the timing with the intended use plan and the timeline that they have through August 23rd, I think that is when the next meeting to adopt it will align really nice with something September that we can present as an agenda topic to alert everyone that's not.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's just what I heard tonight. Anything else, you guys, for future topics? Okay, well, you know where to find Gabe, so send your cards and letters. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Dave. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Have a happy summer.
Hey.
God.